This is the ISG Digital Dish.
Hi everybody, welcome to the Digital Dish.
I'm Lois Coatney, and I lead the development of a new collaboration platform.
I'm Jeanne Cuff. I implement tools to help customers understand their digital environment.
And I'm Julie Fernandez. I work with clients trying to improve all aspects of their HR and people development.
We're a group of women who work for a global digital firm, ISG, and we've created a new podcast, Digital Dish, which explores what it means to be a woman in the digital world.
Our goal is to create a space for women's voices and experiences in digital.
Okay, welcome everybody to the first podcast of 2021 and good riddance to 2020, right?
Good idea.
So we have a fun interview. This is actually a friend of mine I used to work with. She's in a recruiting business. So I really wanted to know about some of the things, the challenges for finding a job in this pandemic period, what kind of things to think about. So that was really important to me that I kind of get into that. And Julie, this is really in your wheelhouse. So what's your thoughts on the interview?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm interested to see where you go with this and what exactly her perspective is. I understand she's a recruiter, right? From the kind of the recruiter world.
Right. Julia Mititelu from the Frank Group recruiting company, and she focuses on AWS. So it got a little technical there. But it was interesting because at the same time I read an article about 5 ways 2020 changed job searching. So I think this is all timely. The bottom line comes down to networking, I think, and then building skills and making sure you're ready to do the Zooming, tough competition, because now the competition is wide open, from anywhere. It's not location specific anymore. And what was really fun was expect a new interview question. So I thought that was interesting. We used to say, what's your favorite movie? But I don't think it's going to be like that.
Well, it does lead to a question. It seems like we always had the mandate before you hire someone, make sure that someone meets them.
Yeah.
Because that is part of the process. And can they build a rapport? It's a skill to build a rapport online like this. So yeah, it'll be interesting to hear what her thoughts are on this.
Right.
Yeah, it really will be. And, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait until I hear where you guys go with your interview, Jeannie, but it's a hot topic. And so in HR, we've been doing these little Market Pulse video clips. They're like 10 or 15 minutes long and such a hot topic, bringing folks back to work and onboarding them, that we did our second segment was on remote onboarding with Stacey Cadigan, who's kind of our talent expert here. And she had some tips, the 4 top tips for remote onboarding. And so in my mind, I'm going to do a little bit of comparison after I see, where your conversation goes.
All right, cool. I have to warn everybody, I have a bit of a rant in there. So my rant is really about how nobody's changed their job descriptions over the years. So that makes me crazy. Just like lists and lists of job descriptions. And it's just, apparently they just keep adding to the list as more tools come up. It's like, oh, could we streamline this and stop putting 10 years of experience for a entry-level position? So that was my rant. It's been my rant for years. In technology, we see it all the time, and it makes me crazy.
Hey, sounds like we get it twice now.
Yeah. Okay. It is a little more articulate, and Julia takes me down a bit, but we're good.
Great.
All right.
Let it roll.
One of the reasons I brought Julia on, though, is we were talking about some of the challenges your company has as a recruiter and some of the digital onboarding things. So let's talk about how you reach out and look for some of these AWS developers and what are the challenges there that you're seeing and what have you doing especially during COVID?
It's funny because the challenges of finding great professionals and how to go about finding them, the recipe, I think, for success in hiring really hasn't changed. Even with COVID, but there are a lot of things that we need to reconsider now that everybody is remote, everybody has everybody's available in different markets. But the essence in and of itself of being a great staffing partner, talent management resource, it starts and ends with the relationship that you have with the client and the relationship you have with professionals and your network. It starts and ends with transparency, full communication as much as possible, especially in an era where there's more and more metrics and HR regulations, contact, etc. The best relationships and the best hiring, best partnerships I think I've seen is transparency and us allowing to be a resource.
Yeah.
And being able to teach people how to hire and what the market's saying.
You're doing the same things. You just have different tools. That's was leading me to my next question. I did a thing in HR a few years ago at a large international company, and I know the tools have changed for you, but they've been changing all along. Do you have any tools that you think are particularly of interest during COVID, or just ones that you look at more often than not, or how you use them? Help me understand this.
The tools, so the tools topic, I might take it in a different direction. Time and time again, we've been told that eventually this process is going to become automated, right? There's a ton of resume searching, skill set specific keyword functions that can match exactly what you're looking for to the market, but it hasn't changed. And, job posting databases, there's automation now where once we see a role that fits a candidate, we can ping them via email. You guys tell me if I'm wrong. Everybody's been in the process of, applying online with job postings and tools, and it really doesn't beat the interaction or like the relationship piece or the ability to network into a job. I mean, there is no tool that's ever going to replace, I think, the recruiting value, a recruiter's value, whether it's internal or like us, a professional company. It really hasn't changed recruiting in and of itself in the last couple of years. But I think as recruiters, we need to be able to teach our clients how to find the best people, where the best people are, and just the reality of the market. Share however much information we have with our clients and coaching them and helping them understand this is what the market looks like today, so that they can set realistic expectations of, this is what my job should look like.
And to that point, I feel like a lot of people have been writing the same job descriptions for 20 years.
100%. Mm-hmm.
And I think that is the problem, that they have a listing of jobs that would take 10 years to get, but they want somebody with like 1 or 2 years introductory kind of entry level thing. It's like, okay, you can't have both. You can't have somebody with 10 years worth of skills on all the software, for example, and a developer, and have all this, Python and Java and HTML, have all that, and also it be an entry level position. Do you see that from your clients?
Oh yeah, 100%. And that's the difference I think a recruiter makes, right? Because yes, there was one company which will be left unnamed, but we use the same project manager description for the entire 6 years I supported them.
Oh,
and maybe the PM role has changed, but people do feel safe with job descriptions. They don't really like it when they don't see one with, bullet points, etc. So it is as much on the candidates as on the companies, but companies will use the same description and then just keep adding tools and technologies.
Right.
So eventually it'll just become a description of tools that are in your environment that you may or may not have implemented at different stages.
Yeah. Well, and I also feel like automation, as fabulous as it is, because, I'm in the technical field, it eliminates people that, hey, it's not the tool, but it works just the same way as that other tool. And it's a hard skill. You can pick that up. If you have all these others, but you get eliminated by the automation. And I think that's frustrating. And to your point, I think that's where a recruiter really comes in and says, wait a minute, let's look at this again.
Yeah, it's connecting the dots, really. So for me to be able to say, hey, I know a company that has this project going on, see a similar company that just finished the same kind of transformation, the skill sets are transferable, right?
Right.
So I think that's where, as a recruiter, the value of coaching and connecting the dots between your clients even, or your pipeline, or your whatever it is, whether they're perm or contract to hire, or even the managed staffing where you need to bring in a ton of people to do a project. That's really the connections that need to be made. Here's what's happening in the market right now. So this is where your talent should be coming from. This is what your peers are doing. Are you going to be doing this? Are you staffed to do this?
Right.
This is the next step. Everybody has an AI initiative. So what does your company look like to support that? Here's what we're seeing. Here's what works. Here's what doesn't.
Yeah.
That's what we need to provide it. And just kind of sort through the data. I mean, that's it. It's awesome that there's so much data out there, but we should be able to understand all that data and then translate that to a client's needs and say, hey, I think you should take a look at this. It's important. and coach them in what's realistic and what's not in their jobs. And from there, your relationship will probably dictate whether or not they listen to you, but eventually it'll play out in whether or not they fill the role or they're open to looking at them. There's probably never a company I've seen that is just stuck to, well, no, there's one. Yeah, this is exactly what we're looking for. We know that there's nobody in the market that has this experience. We know, you've told us, we've looked. Even Azure has told us these experts don't exist out there, but no, that's really just what we need.
So you're looking for a unicorn.
Yeah, and you really need to rely on recruiters to tell you, okay, so what is realistic and why is that the route that I should go?
Yeah.
There's so many ways to approach it. Maybe it's upskilling, maybe it's bringing somebody in and having a company help you train them into the role. There's a ton of different approaches, but being open to the idea versus having a specific job and years of experience, that's my experience. So,
right. So what are the hot skills? I know you're AWS. So what are the hot skills that you're interested in, or you see coming down the road, or that are in need now? What do you have any in your head that you think?
Yeah, big data specifically. Big data, AI, ML. I mean, any kind of experience with data related or Python coding, automation, skill sets that are able to translate into some of these big initiatives companies have. So we do see a lot that need certain certifications or 10 years of Kubernetes, coming from a development background, and then learning the DevOps CI/CD pipeline, what that means in a cloud environment, cloud being both on-prem and in a hosted space, and just what does your staff need to look like from a skill set perspective, and then what about the partners that support you for managed service, or it's all related to cloud.
Right.
I mean, those are the biggest emerging technologies. So although I'm AWS, Azure, our company specifically focuses on Salesforce outside of and NetSuite, and really being focused on those niche vendors / technologies.
Sure.
Every company that we've run into in every vertical has a different flavor of it, but it's all cloud related.
So what actually, with our wide-ranging conversations, one of the things that you and I started this talking about was digital onboarding, that there are gaps. And that's what you and I started kind of kicking around as an idea to talk about. And now we've gone this really interesting path, but that's fine. Digital onboarding. I always thought, it's easy. You got a workflow, everybody follows it, it takes you step by step. And is that true, or is that not true from your perspective?
The real value that we need to provide and what we need to adjust is we're used to somebody going into a company that is obviously has an office location. They know what onboarding looks like in terms of what makes that person productive, right, in the first 10, 15, 30, 50, 60 days, right? But now that we're all remote, and it's great because you can get candidates that sit anywhere, but rethinking the integration to your team, I think a recruiter should play a role, especially after you place somebody, to continue to be a partner to your clients and to your consultant of, hey, is this working? Are you getting feedback? And there's some really, really simple, not digital specific things that I don't know if companies are doing, but we should be coaching them to do, and that will translate eventually into digital onboarding and workflows. As a company that was never remote before, anybody that starts, do all the new people have a group? Are they all chatting together? Does every new person know the other new person that started? It's really hard to gauge too, facial expressions, etc. Just a general feeling of how they're doing in the office versus them being at home. And just setting a touch point with them every week of, hey, so how are you feeling? Not about, this is what we're going to do this tomorrow. It's just having an opportunity for them to say, well, I don't know what I don't know, but I feel good. I feel like I'm not doing anything for these 2 hours, or I am doing something. I'm trying to figure out how I learned this, because you can't set up a Zoom call, right, for 8 hours a day with everybody.
Right. It's too much. Yeah.
Yeah. And a really simple, especially for candidates that have never worked remote before, whoever they're being aligned to, specifically setting time with their managers to just say, hey, what's your feedback for me? Am I integrating well? What should I be doing? What does an effective person do at the end of week 1? What is it that you need me to be able to do at the end of month 1 that solidifies I'm a good fit. And I think that's per more contract, but there's different flavors of that, obviously. But yeah, it's just being able to have that conversation open and candidly, as opposed to like tasks and, project timelines and here's where we're at. Does that make sense? Like, just, it's almost a human.
Absolutely. I have to say, I've worked remote for a couple of years. I've worked remote on and off for like 20 years. So for me, the remote part, I'm like, okay, check in, don't check in, I don't care. But I do actually like the fact that my boss checks in with me every week to say, hey, just let's go over just anything you want to tell me. And like early in the pandemic, I'm like, I'm feeling a little down. I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. And he's like, I know, we all are. And I just told him this yesterday. He's sweeping when he gets like, just to relax, he sweeps. And I'm like, what's that noise? He goes, oh, I sweep to relax. And I'm like, oh my God, that's hysterical. But it made me feel better. It's like, okay, everybody has their things.
Yeah, and especially at a new company.
Yeah.
I kind of lived through it here because I came in and yes, we had an office, but it was a brand new office that we were opening in Chicago.
Right.
To integrate into a company and to do it remotely, where maybe other people know each other, they know what they're like, they hear each other's voices, they know what that person's background is, to integrate into a company where that's not possible for you. It's super important to set time aside to know the really silly things about people.
Yeah.
And just like the very personal details. And it's actually way harder in a sales organization where it's we're focused on metrics and making sure, we're driving and adding as much value as we can in every conversation and being as productive as possible in every conversation. But even internally, you can really lose that. Like, so who are you? How many kids do you have? Do you have pets? You have, and that's stuff that you do in the office just really naturally, but remote, you almost have to make a point of like, okay, do I know this person's favorite band? Like, do they listen to metal? Was that the weird thing? Like, it's just,
I think there's a point too. I think with women, we don't speak up enough. I actually go a little overboard with that. I always speak up, but I do it so I can sort of free the path. Like this, it's important in those team group calls that everybody says something. Everybody speaks up. Everybody's part of that conversation. Because then we're like, oh, that was funny that they told us that story. Or they raised an issue that they were concerned about. Those things, people are like, oh, I don't want to be the loudmouth. Well, somebody's got to be. Usually it's me. But I feel like women need to speak up and just, ask questions. Make sure they're out there saying something so the team recognizes them.
And after they say something, because this is my everybody hates me all the time. They're mad at me immediately. It's the after effect of having said something, because I feel strongly on quite a few topics, and I'm hoping 10 years of experience would be able to add some insight into whatever topic we're talking about, or be able to add input or ask a question of, am I aligned correctly? But after I say something, having no response whatsoever, especially in emails too. And on calls and in meetings, it is so isolating in this.
Oh, yeah.
Again, I overthink it versus, watching my husband even integrate into new companies. As soon as I send something, I'm like, well, they all hate me and they're all mad at me now. So that's that. And just reaffirming, I think, hey, that's following up. Did somebody respond to you on this? Like, this was a great point. Everybody could think it, but especially on group, chats, group emails, like.
Hello, crickets. Yeah. Yeah, they just, all you need to do, and that's part of speaking up. Just say, yeah, you know what, you're right. Thanks for bringing that up. That's all. I agree. I had the same issue. And, maybe share. Or maybe just say, got it, good point, and then that's it. As long as you get that feedback. That's a really good point. Do your clients know that? Do you feel like they know that to recognize that? Or the applicants or the people you're recruiting? Do you feel like that's really getting to be understood?
It goes back to even if I speak up or I say something, almost what I always tend to do, and this was coming from obviously the company we worked at together, great culture and a great feedback culture. But as soon as I'm off the phone or I sent that email, I reach out to whatever connection I've made and just be like, can you just give me some feedback on how that went?
Yeah.
And it is affirming, like, okay, so I wasn't crazy. I didn't sound shrill. I didn't say whatever. But it goes back to just candidates not knowing, hey, I think technical professionals so they're going to tell me what I'm doing wrong, what I'm not doing wrong, as opposed to just stopping and saying like, hey, what's your feedback for me? Like, am I aligned? Am I doing well? Am I not doing well? I don't know if that's a natural instinct unless you come from a culture where that was, very much driven, which you'd have to tell me in a technical group or a space if that's what you're used to. It's easy for me to do it, but yeah.
It is. It's kind of the norm. It's kind of the norm. Well, and remember, I'm usually one of the few women in a technical group for like the last. So it's really funny because they all start laughing because like, oh, Jeannie's going to say something. Well, yeah, I got to speak up because yeah,
I'm part of the group. Yeah.
So I think I do tend to have tech people be a little more quiet. It's like, no, everybody. And when I'm leading a presentation, I will absolutely call out somebody, or I'm leading a group, I will absolutely call someone out. Say, what do you think, Tyler, for example? Because you're right. The feedback is key. And sometimes you have to take control of that feedback.
Yeah. And then having that check-in too with them at the end of every, like, how are you feeling? And calling them out is 100%. Then at least people will hear their voice, know what they're thinking, know their input. But then checking in with them individually is so important. And then building connections for them in the company.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're recreating the wheel. Every time you're like, where do I go to figure this out? That they all know about, but I don't know the right question to ask about where I find it.
Right.
That's honestly where even the recruiting value of, if I place somebody at your company, then hopefully I can keep in touch with them and they can tell me like, I think I'm doing well. Here's my take on it. Having a third party almost be a mediator between the two, I think it's pretty valuable.
That's great.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's hard to know what to ask each other. So,
well, on that note, I'm going to give you some positive feedback on this one, Julia. I think it was a great conversation. I learned a lot, so I appreciate it. Thanks a lot for joining me.
That was an awesome interview, as usual, by Jeannie. Les, what'd you think?
Oh, it was a great interview. Finally, I think we say so timely on so many topics now, but so much of what we're grappling with in business and everything that we do, including hiring and onboarding. I mean, it needs a different flavor. We need to really think about how we do those things these days and how the world has changed. So it was really insightful to hear what she's learned and what she's doing differently.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, COVID and work from home, that accelerated this by leapfrog bounds, years and years, and putting everybody in the space. First, people exiting virtually the organization, and then now, people getting back into the organization. So if it wasn't a hot topic before, it's been one of the hottest ones in the last year or so.
It is, and I think we even did something in our company today, just, catching up with people through some sort of a town hall. And we asked for one of the key words that would describe how they feel or what it's like, working from home. And I think the number one word was isolating.
Yeah.
And if you think about onboarding someone, like she talked about, how do you really go through a process to help as people join, help them feel part of the community, part of the company? How do you successfully get them into a state where they're really happy to be there and able to contribute? It's a tough thing.
Yeah, it sure is. Jeannie actually covered a lot of territory with Julia, and I was relating it a little bit to a web series that we did in HR. It was like our second one, very short snippet for folks on remote workforce, remote onboarding, and they hit on all four of the steps, throughout that interview, all four of kind of the steps or tips and tricks that our internal expert, Stacey Cadigan, had given. And I thought I'd call out each of them because it was so interesting to me that just naturally the conversation took that course. The first one, or the first thing that, that talent experts would tell you is to go digital. And we heard that right away in the interview, especially when Julia was talking about RPA and AI, all this automation is not really going to eliminate, the market. There's changes, but it doesn't eliminate what recruiters do or who they are.
Yeah, you still need to really connect with people, right? In the end, it's great tools to help you maybe do a wider search or a wider understanding of finding the right talent. But at the end of the day, you still really need to make sure you have a strong connection.
Yeah, and then the next two tips and tricks were kind of all wound in there together. We highlighted those as engage quickly, early and quickly, and certainly that was a big underlying part of the interview, and also foster that ongoing connection. And toward the end of that interview, they were talking a lot about inclusion and women needing to speak up and how can you elicit and draw out conversation, right? And those items are really right up there as the top tips and tricks in order to kind of make it through in this environment.
One of the things that, we've done in our Women in Digital organization here is we started a new program in ISG of just having connections of people who aren't necessarily in a mentor-mentee relationship or an organizational relationship. People can sign up, especially women. We're encouraging women to sign up with other women or with also, some of the male leaders in our company, and just set up 15-minute or 30-minute connections. You're not necessarily there to talk about a business issue. You're just simply there to touch base, get to know each other a little bit, what their backgrounds are, talk about maybe what they're doing. It's just a connection, but do those multiple times, right? And just to that point, building those connections, as you said, repeatable connections. It's important to have connections with the folks that you work with on a regular basis, but it's also just important to, how do you do that networking? It's so hard. As a company, can you create those mechanisms to allow, women and really everyone in your organization to be able to network and get to know each other, across regions and organizations?
Yeah, I feel like we've settled in beyond the, our calendars are booked with calls, and now we've figured out how to work all the different tools and, Zoomy things that we could use to connect. And now the bigger challenge is, how do you replicate those informal conversations, when you're letting a calendar drive you from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting in different formats. So, okay, we got that part all down. Now let's figure out how we have some more casual conversations and connections.
Yeah,
for sure.
We need to remember we get social benefits from work as well, right? And we need to build those into the network. Yep.
For sure.
I'm going to jump in and say I love IM to have those calls. I send the offshore team pictures of the snow and my dog, crazy things like that. So I'm just adding to that.
And then there's the cats and dogs. They're the best. Animals are the best.
They are. The last tip and trick that has come out of the HR group, as we're doing some of these things, was another item that I heard touched on in a couple of ways. Stage the onboarding process or stage the activities, because as we're thinking about things, whether it's from the recruiter perspective or onboarding and getting somebody involved, it's like, I have to onboard so-and-so and like check, it's an event or it's an activity. And that's a little bit overwhelming, right? It's great that you get through some of the mechanics of onboarding somebody and you do that virtually, but it doesn't establish a cadence and a relationship and regular touch points. And I heard it in a unique way in the interview with Julia when she said, articulate with the person, what do I need to do by week one? What should I be able to do at the end of month one? And that's a form of staging, where or how somebody can gauge their own performance. But beyond that, I think you just have to stage interactions and cadence, or else it's not as natural just to happen upon somebody in the virtual world, right?
Yeah, that's very true, because if you were working in an office setting in the same area, there's many more touch points throughout the day, and you're able to do that staging, I guess, and I hadn't thought about it that way. You're able to know where you are because you're observing your other teammates and what they're doing.
Yeah.
And you can kind of see where you are in comparison with your other teammates and figuring out how to get there. And that's a really good point to really think about, since you don't have that context of the work environment and seeing what the group is doing or getting that immediate feedback, kind of that continual feedback maybe, and how you stage that to understand where do I need to be next. So critically important. And we just need to think about it, right? It shouldn't just be, hopefully I'll get to it, right? It'll dawn on me.
Yeah.
You really need to put it into practice.
And imagine the challenges, right? I mean, we're moving away from all these linear full-time relationships in the career world, right? And in the workforce. And as agile kind of takes hold and people are forming teams and squads around different bursts of activity, how much harder is it to establish those cadences and touch points with folks when you have multiple teams and very dynamic structures of people coming together to get things done? It's just, the possibilities are infinite and the time is very finite.
That's right. So always start off a new agile team with pictures of your pets and your family. I think that's what you do.
That's awesome. See, Jeannie always has the best wisdom for us.
I don't know if it's the best, but it certainly is something. I just want to say, I love interviewing smart women. I've been having so much fun with this, and I'm so glad you guys enjoy the interviews as much as I do, because I'm following my heart and what I think is going on. And then when you guys say this is a trend, I'm like, cool, I'm on it.
Yeah.
We're on to something. Now that we're in year 2 of our Women in Digital series. So that's really great.
Great. Well, Julia was an awesome pick. So thanks so much, Jeannie, for bringing that interview to us. It was a lot of fun to work around. And I always love highlighting things that touch HR.
Yeah, I know that. There you go.
Well, you guys have a great weekend. Thanks for, bringing this to us, and we'll talk to you guys all next time.
Sounds good.
Thanks. Thanks for joining us on ISG Digital Dish. If you like our podcast, subscribe and please rate and review us. Thanks.